Ebuka walked through the front door with another woman on his arm and a smirk on his face like he had already won something. Ada was standing in the kitchen when she heard the key turn. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, looked up, and the world rearranged itself in the space of 3 seconds. The woman was beautiful, tall, skin like polished amber, wearing a red dress that left nothing to imagination. She walked into her dad's home like she had been there before. Maybe she had. Ebuka set his keys on the counter Ada had scrubbed that morning. He did not look at his wife. He looked at the woman, smiled, touched the small of her back, and said, "Sit anywhere you want." Ada stood very still. "Ebuka?" Her voice was low. "Who is this?" He turned then, and the look on his face was not guilt. It was something worse. It was relief, like a man finally done pretending. "Her name is Isioma," he said. "And before you start, Ada, she is not the problem. You are." If you are new here, subscribe now and turn on your bell so you do not miss what happens next. Ada laughed, not because anything was funny. She laughed the way a person laughs when the thing they feared most finally shows its face and they realized they had already made peace with it in private. She untied her apron, folded it slowly, set it on the counter. "I am the problem," she repeated. "Yes." He sat down, pulled Isioma beside him without hesitation. "You have been the problem since the beginning, honestly. I just kept telling myself it would change, that you would change. But look at you, Ada. Just look at you." She looked at him instead. She remembered the first time Ebuka told her she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. They were 24. He had chased her for 7 months before she agreed to one dinner. At that dinner, he had reached across the table, taken her hand and said, "I don't deserve you yet, but I'm going to spend my whole life trying." She had believed him. She had believed him so completely that she built her entire future on top of that sentence. Now he was sitting on her couch with another woman's perfume on his collar, telling her she was the problem. "When did it start?" she asked. He shrugged. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." "It started," he said, slowly, like he was choosing cruelty on purpose, "when I realized the woman I married and the woman sitting across from me every morning were not the same person. You stopped trying, Ada. You stopped caring how you looked, how you dressed. You just gave up. A man has needs. A man has eyes." Isioma said nothing. She was studying her nails. Ada walked to the mirror on the wall near the hallway. She stood in front of it. She looked at her face, her full lips, her dark eyes, her cheekbones her mother had given her, her skin that never needed much. She looked for what Ebuka saw. She could not find it. She turned back around. "I see nothing wrong with me," she said quietly. He laughed. "That is exactly the problem." She went to the bedroom. She did not slam the door. She sat at the edge of the bed in the dark, and she let herself feel it, all of it, the embarrassment, the grief, the particular loneliness of being rejected by the person who chose you loudest. She pressed her hand over her mouth and she cried without making a sound because she had learned a long time ago that Ebuka did not respond to her tears with comfort. He responded with irritation. She cried for exactly 4 minutes. Then she washed her face, put on her night cream, got into bed. She did not confront him that night. That was 8 months ago. What happened over those 8 months was not dramatic. There was no screaming, no broken plates, no neighbors calling the landlord. What happened was quieter than that, and in many ways much more painful. Ebuka came home later. His phone stayed face down on every surface. He stopped eating her food and started coming home already full. He stopped looking at her when she spoke. He answered in syllables, yes, no, fine, later, and each one-word answer landed in Ada's chest like a small stone dropped into still water. She kept cooking, she kept cleaning, she kept going to work in the morning and coming home at night and maintaining the architecture of a life that had quietly stopped functioning. But here is the thing about Ada that Ebuka never understood, and this is what made him dangerous, his ignorance. While he was watching her and finding her lacking, she was watching him and understanding everything. She was not idle, she was not falling apart, she was building. 3 years before this evening, Ada had taken a loan against her personal savings, money she had been keeping separate since the first year of their marriage, not out of deception, but out of an instinct she could not name at the time. She had used it to open a small provision store in Surulere. She ran it before work and after work and on weekends. She hired her first staff member after 4 months, then a second, then a third. By the end of the first year, the store was profitable. She opened a second one in Lekki 14 months later. She bought the apartment in Yaba 18 months after that. And the house Ebuka walked into every night and called his own, the house he had complained about and threatened to leave so many times, Ada had purchased it quietly through Obina, her property manager, using a legal structure that kept her name protected. Ebuka had signed a lease. He had paid rent every month, transferred cleanly, without ever questioning the account it landed in. He had been her tenant for 3 years without knowing it. She had not planned it as revenge. It had simply been good business. Drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. The morning after Isioma sat in Ada's living room, Ada woke up at 5 and drove to Surulere. She stood in the middle of her store while the shelves were being restocked, and she drank a cup of tea and she breathed. This was hers. Every crate of goods, every fluorescent light overhead, every staff member who said, "Good morning, madam," when she walked in, it was hers. Not because someone gave it to her, because she bent over spreadsheets at midnight, because she argued with suppliers until her voice was hoarse, because she had carried this thing with her own 2 hands from nothing into something real. She called Obina on her way to Lekki. "The Yaba apartment," she said, "is the tenant's lease ending this month?" "Yes, ma, next week Friday." "Good. Do not renew it. I may need to move in." Obina paused. He had worked with Ada long enough to understand what that sentence meant. "Understood, ma. And the main property, allow, sir. Leave it for now. I will let you know." She hung up and marched onto the expressway and turned up the radio and let herself feel something she had not felt in months. Not joy exactly, something more like clarity, like a woman who had been walking through fog and had just stepped out onto open ground. She returned home at 7 that evening to find Ebuka in the living room. No Isioma this time, just him, phone in hand, laughing softly at something on the screen. He did not hear her coming, or he heard her and decided not to acknowledge it. She could no longer tell the difference. She went to the kitchen and started cooking. He appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later, leaned against the frame with his arms crossed. "We should talk," he said. She stirred the pot. "You said everything last night, Ebuka." "Ada, I am serious." She turned to face him, and this moment, she had played it in her head 100 times. The confrontation, the tears, the begging from one side or the other. But standing here now, looking at his face, she felt nothing she expected to feel. No rage, no longing, no hope. "Talk then," she said. He came fully into the kitchen, stood close enough that she could smell him, the familiar cologne she had bought him 2 Christmases ago. It struck her as almost funny that he was still using it. "Isioma means nothing," he said. Ada looked at him. "She is just someone I have been talking to. It is nothing serious. But you and I, we have a real problem, and I think you know that." "What is the problem, Ebuka?" "Us. The distance. Ada, I feel like I am living with a stranger. You never talk to me anymore. You are always running around with your business, and you come home tired, and you have nothing left for me. A man cannot live like that." She turned back to the pot. "So Isioma is my fault," she said calmly. "I did not say that. You brought her into this house," Ada said. Her voice did not rise. It leveled, the way a road flattens right before a cliff. "You sat her on that couch and you told me I was the problem, with her sitting right there, Ebuka. You did that." He was quiet. "And now," she continued, "you are standing in my kitchen telling me she means nothing. Which one should I believe?" He reached for her arm.
turned her gently toward him. And this part that still destroyed her even now, even after everything, he still knew how to look at her in a way that made her remember who they used to be. His eyes went soft, his jaw unclenched. He touched her face with the backs of his fingers the way he used to when they were young, and everything between them was uncomplicated. "I still love you," he said. Ada closed her eyes. She let herself stand there in that feeling for just a moment, not because she believed him, but because she wanted to say goodbye to it properly. The version of her that had waited for those words, the version of her that would have collapsed with relief to hear them. She wanted to acknowledge that woman, honor her even, before letting her go. She opened her eyes. "No," she said softly, "you love what I do for you. That is not the same thing." She stepped back, out of his reach. He stood there, hands suspended in the air where her face had been. "You are done giving up on this marriage, so that's it," he said. "You gave up first," she said. She served his food, set the plate on the table. "Eat, and then we need to talk about the house." He sat down, confused by the pivot. What about the house? She sat across from him, folded her hands on the table. "Obina is coming tomorrow," she said. "Who is Obina?" She smiled. A real one, small and private, like a secret she had been keeping so long it had grown into something beautiful. "You'll meet him tomorrow," she said. "Eat your food." He ate. He did not know he was sitting in her property, eating food she had cooked, wearing cologne she had paid for, and planning to throw her out of a life she had quietly purchased out from under him. Like the video if you are still here, because the next part will change everything. Obina arrived at 11 the next morning, carrying a brown folder under his arm, dressed quietly in a plain white shirt and dark trousers. He rang the bell once. Ada opened the door before Ebuka could get there. "Come in," she said. Ebuka appeared from the hallway, towel around his neck from the shower, and looked at this stranger in his living room with the particular annoyance of a man who had not been consulted. "Ada, who is this?" he said. "Sit down, Ebuka." Something in her voice made him sit. She sat across from him. Obina stood to the side, silent, patient. Ada placed both hands flat on the table between them. She had thought about this moment for weeks. She had rehearsed it in the Lekki car park, in the Yaba apartment stairwell, and in the car on the way to Surulere at 5 in the morning. But now that it was here, she did not need the rehearsal. She was simply ready.
"I want you to know," she said, "that everything I am about to show you, I did not do to hurt you. I did it because I had a responsibility to myself that I was not going to abandon even when you made me feel like I was nothing." Ebuka frowned. "Ada, what are you talking about?" She nodded at Obina. He opened the folder and set the first document on the table. "Surulere," Ada said. "I own a supermarket there. I have owned it for 3 years. It turns over profits every quarter." Ebuka stared at the paper. She nodded again. Second document. Lekki, second branch. Opened 14 months after the first. Bigger floor space, higher volume. His mouth opened, closed. Third document. Yaba, a 3-bedroom apartment, fully tenanted. The lease generates income every month. The room was very quiet now. Ebuka's eyes moved from paper to paper, like a man reading in a language he almost understood, but not quite. Then Obina set down the fourth document. Ada let the silence run for a full 5 seconds before she spoke. "This house, Ebuka," she said. Her voice was steady, gentle even, like she was explaining something to a child she did not want to frighten. "You have been paying rent here for 3 years. The account you transfer to every month belongs to me. The ownership documents list my name. You are not the landlord of this house. You are the tenant." Ebuka stood up. He looked at the document, looked at her, looked at the document again. "That is not..." He stopped, picked it up, read it properly this time, put it back down. Ada, how?" Obina structured it legally. "Your lawyer saw the lease. He just did not check who owned the property." "I would have known." "You did not want to know," she said quietly. "You never asked. You assumed.
You have spent this entire marriage assuming, Ebuka. You assumed I was not trying. You assumed I had nothing going on. You assumed that if you brought Isioma in here and told me to leave, I would pack a bag and disappear. You assumed this house was yours. He sat back down slowly, like the bones in his legs had gone soft. Where is all this coming from? He asked. His voice had lost its texture. He sounded like a younger version of himself, lost. It is coming from me, she said, the woman you could not see. She stood now, and something shifted in the room when she rose. The gravity of it, the weight of it moved from his side of the table to hers and did not move back. You told me I was not enough, she said. You said it with your mouth, and you said it with your eyes, and you said it by bringing another woman into my home. You spent months making me feel invisible, and I want you to know I heard every word. I felt every silence. I cried every tear. I did not hide from any of it. Ebuka looked at her. But I also walked, she said, every single morning while you were still asleep. Every evening while you were on your phone, every weekend while you were busy being somewhere I was not invited, I walked because I knew who I was even when you were doing everything you could to make me forget. His jaw tightened, not from anger now, from something that looked like grief. Ada, I am not finished. She said it without heat. You broke something in this marriage a long time ago. I do not know exactly when, but I know you made a choice to stop seeing me, to stop fighting for us, to look elsewhere. And that choice has a cost. She reached out and gathered the documents from the table, stacked them neatly, handed them back to Obinna. You can stay in this house, but the rent goes up next month. Obinna will send you the new agreement. Ebuka blinked. You cannot be serious. I am the most serious I have ever been in my life. She picked up her bag from the armchair. She was wearing the mustard blouse and her Ankara trousers and her gold chain. And she looked like a woman who had just remembered her own name after years of answering to someone else's version of it. She walked to the door. At the doorway, she stopped, turned halfway. Ada, I loved you, she said. I loved you before you deserved it, and I loved you after you stopped earning it. But love without dignity is just suffering dressed up nicely, and I am done suffering. She walked out. The door closed behind her, not slammed, just shut, with the particular finality of a woman who had already grieved the ending long before it arrived. Ebuka sat alone in her house, holding nothing, surrounded by documents that told him the truth he had spent years refusing to see. Outside, Ada got into her car. She sat for a moment, looked at her own hands on the steering wheel. Then she exhaled, long and slow, and she smiled, not for him, not for anyone watching, just for herself. She started the engine and drove towards Lekki. She had a business to run. If this story moved you, like this video, subscribe to the channel and drop your location in the comments right now. Where in the world are you watching from? Because this story was made for someone exactly like you.